NBA draft. We are right in the middle of looking at prospects, and we're going to talk about the biggest prospect, literally, Zach Edey. We're also going to talk Nikola Topic and a few others. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Ignacio Garcia, and Domantas Sabonis is my godson. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your jobs for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms, so thumb up, double bang, all that sort of stuff. You've seen over the last few days that we've talked guys like Zachary Ricochet, Alexa. We've talked Bronny James. We're going to go through all the top draft choices. We're going to have another two big names today with Edey, Nikola Topic, four other guys as well. And it is a great day today because this is the first day that I am bringing in, and we do this every year, and bringing in, it was the first member of the No Ceilings crew that is coming in to the show. We're going to have a few of those guys on, but first one for this year coming in right now. All right, so here he is. As I said, the first, breaking the seal on the No Ceilings flood that is coming your way this season. Corey Tulaba is back again to talk NBA draft with me. Corey, I just mentioned this too, but I have to bring it up now. I am absolutely loving the fact that you have a custom orange. What do you even call these things that sit on top of the mics? The
pop filters.
The pop filter. You got the custom orange. So now I'm looking at mine, boring black. Go, what color should I put on mine? I go, I'm going to get some. Maybe, and my brain goes, that's great. You've got the custom orange, but do I go from the 1980s custom blue Axl Rose one from all those Guns N' Roses film clips? That's a great pop filter, the big blue one he used to have. But that's completely nothing to do with the NBA draft. But welcome back. Welcome to the show.
I appreciate you having me. I appreciate you bringing it up. It's actually a funny story. We bought a bunch of them. Turns out I bought like 20 of them by accident for when the No Ceilings crew was in Portland, Oregon for the Nike Hoop Summit. And as it turned out, we couldn't even figure out how to record in the same room together.
Oh, wow.
And we didn't even get to use them. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to take them, and every microphone I have, I'm going to put one on, and, you know, we got to live our brand.
Maybe you could get them somehow branded and then head out to like Summer League and give them out to the first 20 people that come up to you and go, hey, you want a No Ceilings microphone pop filter, and see if you get traction on that.
I think that's a good idea. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I'd take one off you. All right, we're gonna talk draft though, because this is obviously a draft that is, again, we all know this, lower on high-end players, but it doesn't mean there's more intrigue. And there's possibly, Corey, maybe is there more work involved in a draft where it's like, man, we don't really know what's going to happen from a team perspective or how we project these players? Is that like a harder situation, a draft that includes more sort of work from you guys?
I wouldn't say it's more work or harder. I like to think that, you know, we focus our evaluations irregardless of class, and we put the same amount of effort. I would say there's probably less pressure, honestly, than anything else, because, you know, you look at a class like last year, obviously Vic, outlier situation. He's going to be number one. If you had him at number two, you did it literally just because you wanted attention, right? But there was a very real debate about Scoot Henderson and Brandon Miller. And, you know, if you're an actual NBA team or a franchise or just somebody who's doing the scouting thing publicly, you know, those are the kind of evaluations that, you know, you kind of bread your butter on, and that you kind of build a reputation on seeing through the hard choices, because it was pretty unanimously Scoot amongst consensus, right? And Charlotte fans are booing on you know, lottery night, draft night, because they chose Brandon Miller. So like, those are actually harder. This one, it's like, oh, there's no consensus. So technically, like, how could you really be wrong. This is your opportunity to take a swing. So I would say there's less pressure than anything else, but it's certainly been a lot of fun.
Let's have some fun talking about this first guy then, because we are going to Zach Edey, one of the most recognizable names through the college basketball landscape, not only this year, but last year as well. He was obviously in the discussion to be drafted last year, decided at the end to go back to school. And I'll start with that. I'm always going to bake in, whether it's 5, 10, 2% level, whatever, skepticism for guys who are like, maybe they're going to go into a draft that's stronger, than they go, nah, we'll see what happens for the next year. And then they come out and they put up big numbers and better numbers as an older player in what is considered a weaker format now. Edey's numbers are insane. He's obviously huge. He's 22 years of age, is 7'4", 7'5", 32 and 15 per 40 minutes. Big block numbers, huge usage. 81% free throw rate. That's not free throw percentage. That is 81% free throw rate. Like the amount of times he gets to the line. So he just gets to the line all the time because he's so huge. And there are a lot of split opinions on Edey. Corey, he's a guy that's obviously big. He moves slower than everybody else. We see combine flashes. Oh, he moved better than I thought. Oh, he shot the three better than I thought. He puts up these numbers. And count me in the skeptical side of a guy like this again, who is advanced age for college guys and has that significant advantage. And I do really worry about. Now, I don't think he's Boban Marjanovic, but I do worry about the agility and the size and whether the offensive stuff that he shows in college has any real shot of being, an outlier type skill in the NBA. But where do you sit on the Zach Edey stuff? Because there'll be people who, honestly, and like you said at the start, there'll be people who say, like, no, he's got to go in the top 10 of this draft. And there'll be people saying, well, he's outside the top 30 for me. Where are you on the Zach Edey scenario?
I think he's a lottery prospect in this class. I would have no problem at the back end of the top 10, given the right situation, taking him there. I've had the privilege, I guess, with Edey of seeing him in person over, a couple of years span and seeing how he's improved his game, how he's gotten better, how he's evolved. I do think, with him, like you said, he's not Boban. He is an outlier physically. Like, seeing him live, it helps a little bit because he's just one of those guys where like people are not supposed to move like this and like that are that big. And I have only ever experienced that seeing like Victor Wembanyama and Bol in person, where I'm like, these guys are also human beings, like with me. Like that's weird. But obviously for a different reason, because he's thick and you're like, wow, he's a lot more fluid than I think you might think he is sometimes. But as far as like what he has to do at the next level to succeed, right? Like obviously he's not going to be fed heavy post touches in the same way that he was in college, because he doesn't have the same kind of passing instincts as a Jokic, who can operate more so out of the post, right? So he has to find ways to contribute in other ways on the basketball court, in ways that maybe he isn't used, not necessarily used to, but hasn't been being used as. So do I still think he's going to get post touches? Of course. NBA teams are going to switch. They're going to find mismatches. And unlike in college, NBA teams aren't going to send 4 different guys to Zach Edey. It's probably going to feel pretty nice to only be single covered. You saw what he was able to do in that scenario against, possibly the top defensive center in college basketball in the national championship game against Donovan Clingan. He was scoring on him and bringing it to him. But what he could do in a modern role is he is a really underrated pick and roll operator. He is 100th percentile lob threat. He is an excellent screener. And in an NBA that is so heavily ball screen reliant, whether it's flowing it from a handoff or just a high pick and roll, a guy who's that big, who can set a screen, make contact, and allow the guard to get downhill or put the big in a 2-on-1 to kind of dissect a defense, that's just going to have an impact on its own. Defensively, I think that because of the role that he played, and you also have to give him credit for playing 30-plus minutes at his size, that's insane. Like, his stamina is insane. Again, look at Clingan, who is another giant dude. He played
23 minutes or something, didn't he?
Correct. And I love Clingan. But, like, for Edey to do that is truly impressive on its own. But his role was, like, he had to pick and choose his spots defensively. As far as where he was going to be aggressive and when he was going to just kind of make an impact with his size. But if you saw like in the second half of the Tennessee game where he did choose to be a little bit more aggressive and hunt blocks and go after, guys defensively, he was super, super impactful. I mean, he's got a 7'11" wingspan. And again, just being that tall and that large is deterring people. I had an NBA team tell me last year during individual workouts, when they were doing 3-on-3 stuff with other prospects, like dudes were just straight up afraid to like go near him. So I don't think he is this tremendous rim deterrent, or this outlier rim deterrent in that way. But I think just the fact that he's shown the skills to do it, he's gotten better at it, and he can do it in a more limited role or when he has the opportunity to be aggressive. I think he's going to be a good defender that makes an impact just through sheer force and size. And then offensively, again, he still has room to grow. He's going to score efficiently. You see how hard it is to stop him from scoring near the rim. You talked about his free throw rate. Unbelievable that a guy that size that gets fouled that much can then go and knock down free throws. Like that's a tremendous asset for a team. So like, again, he's not going to have 3 or 4 guys draped over him, but if you have one guy, it's going to be hard not to foul him on the block. So he's going to be an efficient scorer in this draft class, which, I don't necessarily know if I would say it's weak. I think there are going to be high impact players. I just think there's no superstars necessarily in this class. But I think that this is a guy who you can feel safe that you're going to be like, you know what, he is going to play in the NBA for a long time, given, an injury, which is something you can say with any prospect.
I think that's what the overwhelming idea, not just about Edey, but about this draft has been with the guys that I've spoken about, is that we talk about the lack of maybe top-end star talent, but there's still a bunch of really good and solid players who be starters or role players or whatever they are, and we just have to sort of, I guess, recalibrate our expectations, and picking 2 in this draft is not the same as a pick 2 in other drafts, but that doesn't mean that it's bad or anything like that. It just changes our idea that if we're picking at 7, we need to get this all-star impact player. But in this draft, it might be, well, maybe you're just getting a player who's a 25-minute bench guy that's still unbelievably important, but that's still really good. And it's just changing that idea. Now, I guess that's where we get to with Edey just quickly, because you mentioned the defense, and people are going to look at this, and the number one thing that a lot of people will do is look at what's happening in the NBA currently. Like, let's just say Jokic and Embiid. Who's going to guard those guys? Yeah, the strength of the size of Edey. We can talk about defensive positioning and rim protection, but just strength-wise, is there a valid argument to bump him up boards because of that size, and like when those guys are playing in the post and trying to outmuscle him, that he can actually just stand there and go, I'm actually strong enough to withhold that, when a number of other guys just aren't able to do it? Is that can he actually do that, or is the size to, I guess, strength ratio not what it should be?
Oh, I mean, look, if he falls down the draft board at any point and I'm one of these teams that has to go through one of those guys, I'm going, oh, wait, I can get this guy who can match up physically with these guys, who does have the strength, who does have the length. And, Jokic especially, Jokic is an incredible athlete as far as agility goes and the way that he can move and his footwork and all that. But obviously he doesn't have blow by speed that you necessarily have to worry about with a guy like Edey. So if I was, a contending team and Edey was on the board still when I was picking, I would certainly consider him, just because I think, we see teams build teams for the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
Like the Minnesota Timberwolves were built to take down the Nuggets, right? And they did it. It was hard. Nothing is given in this league. And now we see, well, they were maybe built for this one team, but maybe the Mavericks give them different issues. And you have to build for multiple ways. But if you're building, looking forward and we have to go through a certain team, I think that, whether you're in the East with Embiid or in the West with Jokic, I certainly don't think that that's a bad strategy, because you do have to go through those teams. And he's a guy who is old enough to come in and make an impact, in a shorter time frame than some raw freshman who has good athletic tools, but maybe doesn't know what he's doing on the basketball court yet. So I do kind of think that is a strategy that certain teams should explore. Maybe not a team that's far away from contending. I think if you buy into Edey's talent, then yeah, I think that is an interesting acquisition. But if you're just like, oh, we have to go through the Nuggets and you're not anywhere close to even making the playoffs, obviously that means less.
We're going to get into some more prospects very, very soon. But firstly, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you are out hiring for your small business, well, you got to make sure that those choices that you make for your staff, whatever roles they're in, you got to make sure they're the correct ones, because staff are one of the biggest investments you make and one of the most important investments you make in a business to guarantee success, really. And LinkedIn Jobs is not just another job board. It is LinkedIn. So it's got access to over 1 billion professionals. You put your job in front of those guys over on LinkedIn, and you're pretty close to making sure you get the right person replying back. In fact, small business owners who use LinkedIn Jobs say that they get a qualified candidate responding within 24 hours, 86% of the time. Hiring is easy when you get that many quality candidates that you can look through. So go and post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That is linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right. So that is the first big name prospect that we're going to talk about. The next one we are going to talk about is another guy who's going to go much higher, I would say, in the draft, and that is Nikola Topic. Love having a Jokic, Jovic, and Topic combination in the NBA. It's just, it's great for the people who might mess things up. Looking forward to that, obviously. Topic, a very different player to those other gentlemen. But what we're looking at here is a prototypical new-aged sized point guard, a 6'6" point guard who played for Mega Basket and then moved over to Red Star. And I mispronounced the name of that team the other day, and I'm not going to... Zvezda.
Yeah,
I keep getting it wrong, and I really need to improve it. But I'm not going to be talking about Zvezda. Anyway, Red Star is what it's called. I'm not going to get that. Have to pronounce that too often as we move forward. He averaged 21 and 8 per 40, 24 usage, 35% attempt rate. Nikola Topic. Name has been discussed anywhere from pick 1 through to pick 4 through to pick 8. Seems he's going in the top 10. Couple of knee problems, Corey, which have cropped up recently. We look at this and go, that's great. We love the size. We love the position. There are teams in the top of the draft. We look at pick number 2. They need a point guard. We need to look at team number 4, the Spurs. They need a point guard. There are very obvious landing spots for Nikola Topic. What do you make of the mid-season change of teams, and how does that impact your evaluation, and whether this not a level of hype, but is this a legitimate NBA starting prospect who you feel confident about, or is it another one of these ones? Well, he's big, so we think it's going to work. Like, I don't know if that makes complete sense. We love the size and the passing's there, but where does it sort of sit on that level of like, no, we've got to have this guy. He's clearly the number 1 point guard.
I'm a huge fan. I think he has all-star potential. And also Nikola with the ending in the itch. Also, they all played for the same team.
They did too.
Coming up. So that's another interesting little fact. But yeah, I love Nikola Topic's game, and I think it's interesting that he switched teams halfway through. And as an evaluator, it's super cool because you get to see him in different roles in a different context, like playing for Red Star, who is a Euro League team. And unfortunately, the injury kind of saddled him from playing that upper tier competition. Because when he came back, he was coming back to the Adriatic League. But getting just to see him now shift from, all right, I have the ball in my hands all the time, and I get to be the decision maker, to, all right, I'm still going to play with the ball in my hands sometimes, but also I have to play off of these other more experienced players on this better team. And I thought that was really interesting. Again, unfortunately, with the knee injury, like, he didn't have necessarily the same pop around the rim. Not that he's like a high flyer, but like he's the same like cat-like quickness that he could use all the time. So his finishing numbers, with Red Star weren't as impressive as they were with Mega, because he was finishing around 70% at the rim, and that's both in transition and in the half court there. But it was cool to see them in a different context, and it was cool to see him still be able to do the things that impress me about him, which is operate ball screens, make quick reads, make highly advanced reads, be able to manipulate a ball screen and come off a screen to the right side of the court, and use the kind of the gravity and overloading that court to then make a skip pass to the weak side corner, because the low man is, heading towards the paint. All the stuff that makes him special and is what makes NBA playmaking special. Now, there are going to be questions about him as a shooter, as there should be. He's been inconsistent as a three-point shooter, but the one positive is he's a good free throw shooter, and he's actually an excellent free throw shooter.
Yeah, great.
And that's a really good indicator going forward. Now, on the downside, he doesn't have an in-between game because when you can find like a mid-range game, or guys who take long twos and are good free throw shooters, then you can really project out to be three-point shooters. So he's kind of a tricky eval, and you kind of have to go based on what you believe with your eyes. I think that he's got pretty good rotation. He needs some work, especially in catch and shoot situations with his footwork and his shot prep. But like, he is one of the youngest, if not the young. I think him and Tijan Salon are born on the same day. I think they're the two youngest prospects in the class. So like, the fact that he's been so productive at such a young age, and he has things that, like, his weaknesses, you can feel optimistic about them improving. I think that it makes him a high-level prospect. If the Washington Wizards decided that he was their guy at pick 2, I don't think that's too high. If the Hawks wanted to blow it up entirely and get rid of all of their assets, I think he's worthy in this class of being taken at number 1. Granted, he doesn't make much sense there if they keep their guards, but he's a guy that I think is going to have a successful NBA career. He's got a lot of basketball that he needs to improve on, but some of his skills are just so high level that, it's one of those things where, like, not every player has an outlier trait in this class, and he has some outlier stuff.
Yeah, the outlier stuff is really important, I think, especially in the lower prospects. So as we get further down, it becomes more of like, do you have this great individual skill? And then when we look at the top end guys, do you have this gigantic detriment that might hold back top end outcomes? And I think you're looking at those two things versus, like, I think with this draft, I feel like there's about 30 guys who are 6'8" who are just like average at every single thing. And you go, okay, well, what's the point of that? A pick between pick 30 and 45, like, just whichever guy's name I like the most. Like, that's how that sort of comes about. But yeah, that outlier skill part is interesting. One thing that I talked about, I don't remember which show of these prospects I did. We talk about evaluating players, and we look at Topic, and we say this, that the shooting's going to be a problem. He shot 30% from 3, whatever it is, but good free throw shooter. All those indicators are great. But the other thing that is interesting is the season before, when he was 17, he shot 37% from 3. Now, he did that across some different situations. He played for back playing for Red Star there, played Red Star Youth, played for this other team, another Belgrade team there as well, like shot 37% on that team. But yeah, so there's been some bad seasons in the past for shooting through his youth, but there's been some good seasons as well. It seems to be a little bit all over the place, but as a general, we know that there's a lot of three-point attempts that are needed to sort of stabilize someone's shooting. But being a good free throw guy all that way through, like 88 this year, 89 the year before, I think I do put way more stock in that, meaning that he can become at least passable to average to above average, again, given he shot 37% as a 17-year-old the year before.
I think that's spot on. Free throw shooting, get to be consistent on. It's great to play in different contexts like that. And, he has success. He doesn't. He's young. That happens with young players. But at the end of the day, like, even if he's not going to be a guy that you would label as a shooter, he's not afraid to take them. And I think he's going to make shots. So he might not have the same designation as a guy like Reed Shepherd, who is an absolute marksman, but can he be a shot maker? Like, if you go and look at the percentages on a guy like Luka doesn't shoot a high percentage from 3, but he takes enough of them and makes enough of them that you still have to guard him out there and make him make those shots. So at the end of the day, I think the fact that he's willing to take shots if a guy goes under, or he can take a shot off the bounce, he pulls from range sometimes. These are all positive indicators going forward.
There's always outliers. There's always guys who are bad free throw shooters and elite three-point shooters. Joe Harris, there are always guys who are good free throw guys and never can hit threes, and a name there doesn't really come to mind, but there's plenty of them that exist. DeMar DeRozan is one of those ones, like Jimmy Butler. Yeah, they hit their free throws at 90% but can't hit threes, and that's always... There's always going to be those outliers, but as a general rule, that is a pretty good way to look at that. And again, he did have that success, or relative success, the year before, younger player, hitting 37%. So I wouldn't write that part of his game off. We're going to be back with another bunch of prospects, but today's episode is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. They are all of the ingredients, the formula, in fact, for winning championships. And it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performances. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, and LED headlights. Corey, if you were to choose one of those things, superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, or LED headlights, what would you supercharge your car with? What would you level it up with?
Probably the headlights.
LED headlights.
Safety.
There you go. Corey Tulaba recommends LED headlights, and you can get them over at eBay Motors. They are just one of the 122 million plus parts that are available for your number one ride or die. Unfortunately, 121.5 million of them are all just LED headlights after Corey's recommendation, but that's okay. You can still find everything that you need over at eBay Motors, because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber and not cash. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit is only available to US customers. So me and Zach Edey, unfortunately, we can't take advantage of it. All right. Next bunch of players. Next guy we're going to talk about, we're going to go to Nique Clifford, a guy that I heard interviewed over on your on the No Ceilings Network a week or two ago, I think it was, that he was on there discussing his game. One of these, I was looking through some of his historical statistics, and pretty weird to see a guy transfer from Colorado to Colorado State. I think you see that happen a huge amount, but that's where we're at with Nique Clifford. And he, I don't know, maybe I was being a little bit harsher, but is he one of these guys I'm talking about, a 22-year-old 6'8" wing who just does a little bit of everything, and I'm not really sure what his outlier skill is, because 10 rebounds per 40 is pretty good. He's 6'6", played 30 minutes, 21 usage, took some threes, was pretty efficient. I'd say maybe he's not quite that guy, because the defensive stats pop up, the rebounding stuff pops up. So is he, okay, if I look at this profile of a player without knowing anything about him necessarily, if I was to look at that stat profile, I'd say, he looks to me to be an undersized power forward in almost the Jay Crowder mold, who's doing a bunch of defensive stuff, outsized rebounder, but he's pretty small in doing it.
So Nique is interesting. Nique's one of the guys that I really bought in early on because of how he can kind of fill up a box score.
Yep.
Maxwell from No Ceilings just interviewed him on our site a couple of weeks ago. I actually broke down film with him for No Ceilings. I want to say it was probably in like December or January. It was pretty early on. I started watching his film because, we go on Bartorovic as evaluators and we start trying to figure out statistical kind of things that pop up, guys who are having these weird seasons. And then you go through it and you're like, all right, this guy's playing, in the Patriot League, or I'm watching it and I'm like, this guy doesn't move the way an NBA guy does. And I started watching Nique really closely. And I went, he moves like a basketball player. He moves like an NBA player. Oh, he's strong. Oh, he's athletic. Oh, he'll put you on a poster. He can run a ball screen. Oh, he can hit a little mid-range pull-up. And at this time, he was shooting like 50% from three, which obviously I knew that was going to go down. But I looked at the form and I was like, all right, he can shoot it. And then I started watching him defensively, and I started watching him defensively in contests against other guys who had a little bit of hype in the draft. And he put, at the time, Trey Alexander was this guy who people thought could potentially be like a top 20 pick, maybe even a lottery pick. And he just put him in jail. He just clamped him up. And using his size, using his strength, his footwork, his discipline. And I look at a guy, who can rebound like him, and you see how valuable in the playoffs like Josh Hart was, because he can rebound. He can pass and make plays. Maybe he's not going to be your primary initiator, but he's going to attack a closeout and make the right read. He's going to make a quick one more. He's going to screen and make a pass out of the short roll. He's going to be able to do all of these things at a high level that contribute to winning while playing tough defense, making winning plays. And then every once in a while, Josh Hart's going to knock down a three. Now, I think that Nique Clifford has better form than Josh Hart, but Nique still has kind of some things to shore up as a shooter. I think a big thing for him, in which he told me, is just like the confidence thing as a shooter. I think as a shooter, you just have to have no conscience and just be like, all right, that one didn't go in, the next one's going to go in. I'm still doing everything that I can mechanically that is going to lead to success. But he still shot a good percentage. He's a pretty good free throw shooter. So I just think he's a super solid player. And the thing that it really surprised me throughout this whole cycle is that he really hasn't had a lot of hype as a draft prospect. I think No Ceilings is the only the only outlet that has had him on a mock or a board up until like the last few weeks, when I think ESPN has him in like the 90s. And I think maybe the Athletic Sam Vecini had him, I think in like the 80s of his board. But he went and got himself invited to the NBA draft combine. He didn't go to elite camp. He didn't have to play at Pitt or anything like that. He got invited to the combine. And that tells me that NBA teams feel differently than these media outlets. They believe that this is somebody who has NBA tools. Teams that I've spoken with have been like, I kind of hope these outlets don't follow suit and see where you guys are ranking them, because maybe he'll be available at our pick. Now, maybe that means as a second rounder, maybe it means as a guy who you take at the end of the first round. But I think that Nique has a really interesting game because he can do so many things, and he has this fluid plus athleticism and strength. And I'm not saying, I don't think he's going to be a star. I don't think he's going to be the next Jalen Williams type of player who kind of comes out of nowhere in the draft. But I do think that he's a really talented guy that ultimately is going to find the right home and contribute to winning.
He's an interesting player, and again, those defensive stats, the rebound numbers do stand out. And we already saw a player that, like, you put him into some of the similarity stuff. And one of the names that came up was Tamani Kamara, who obviously had success this season in Portland as a guy that's not racking up big numbers, scoring or anything like that. He's just doing solid defensive things as an older prospect. So I think that's not necessarily the same sort of the player, but like that same, like, what role can you fill in the NBA? Can you play down on wings? Can you push up to fours? Can you just do little bits of things and sort of bide your time and slide into the areas that you need to slide in at the right time? And that's really valuable. And I think at times we do overlook that skill. Now, this is the next guy we're going to talk about is a player that you've definitely seen more of than me, and that's strange because he played down here, not that far away from me, but a lot closer to me than he is to you, and that is AJ Johnson. Now, you didn't see much of him play because he didn't play a huge amount down here, but played for Illawarra, which, for those of you who don't know, is the team that LaMelo Ball played for. Down here, he played 8 minutes a night, which is, I think, probably the lowest minute total of anybody that's in this draft class. I can't think of anybody that was in that zone. Like 21, it's hard to take much out of these numbers. Like, 13 points per 40, 21 usage, 39 attempt rate. He just didn't play. So he came down with a little bit of fanfare down here. Probably obviously not as much as what Alex Sarr did. But where are we at with what Johnson is? It's a guy that came in with that level of pedigree, playing in this man's league, strong league, doesn't just give opportunities across to young players, but obviously he didn't take anything that he was given, really. So what's the story of his season, and how far does that set him back?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think as far as what his draft stock is, the season definitely set him back. Yep. But as far as what is going to make him a better basketball player, I actually think it's pretty good for him, what he went through with that team, because it was a weird situation for him, and he didn't play a lot, but he did get to play in a really tough league with really physical grown men. And we got to see how he adjusted to that. Now, it's hard to take anything out of the offensive percentages just because he's getting 3 minutes one game. Maybe he gets 11 minutes the next. Then he's going to play 30 seconds. And it's hard to find a real rhythm, right? So you're really just looking for the flashes of the kind of skills that he has. So I think for me, one of the reasons that I've stuck with him and been high on him through the process, I got to see him in high school. Yeah, okay. I saw him play live at the Iverson Classic game, which had a lot of the guys in this class, Rob Dillingham, Steph Castle, a bunch of guys who were at the top and who are going to be in next draft too. And he was by far the best player on the court. It wasn't even close. And this was in front of a bunch of NBA scouts and evaluators that were also there to see it. And so the thing that was interesting and the thing that he took advantage of was getting to go to these combine games and show what he could do. And he was one of like the breakout players in these combine games, showing off like he has this, athleticism. He had, a crazy poster dunk. He was really quick. He made some really intriguing passes, and he was able to knock down shots on and off the ball. But, in a 2-game sample, it's just as hard to really pick stuff out as it is, in his sample from Illawarra. But the one thing I will say he was consistent with, and the thing that impressed me the most about his season in Australia, is that he was, I think, pretty excellent as a defender. Okay. Like, this is a kid who did not weigh in, at 220 pounds at the combine. Thin frame, good, not great length. But I thought the way he moved, the way he competed, his effort level, I thought that was the thing that shocked me, because I was expecting him to show offensive flashes, even, without some of the percentages and the numbers and the scoring outbursts. You could still see like the makings of, an NBA skill set, but the defense took me by surprise. And I think that's a really encouraging sign that he was not only able to compete defensively, but he was willing to do it and not just sulking because the season didn't go his way. And I think that these are valuable lessons for him moving forward, maybe a little humbling, and like, all right, well, now I have these other skills that I can bring. I still am that dynamic offensive prospect that I was in high school that made me a 5-star. Right. But now I also have these other things that I learned that I can hang my hat on. I went through a little bit of adversity. I had to fight through that. This was a challenging season. I was away from home. So I think that all of that stuff is a positive going forward for him. And, I've never removed him from my first round throughout this entire year, just because he wowed me in person in a way that a lot of prospects, haven't. But I just think he's a very intriguing upside swing for a team. I'm not telling a team to take him in the lottery or anything, but if you're a team that has a couple of different picks and you want to take a swing on somebody, I think he's a pretty damn good swing to take.
We hope that sort of that upside hits. Otherwise, he ends up as a Terrence Ferguson, who comes down here and plays in the NBL and plays 5 minutes a game and then does absolutely nothing in the NBA. But I think AJ, again, this sounds simplistic, but he looks like a prospect. Like, he's just got the look,
part of it,
the body shape, the size, the proportion. He just looks like he should be a prospect. Now, that's a stupid thing to say, but there's just something about it where you go, oh yeah, I can see why I want to take a chance at this, and I can see why it might work, it might not. Like, who knows? But there's a certain look that is there with his game. Next guy we're going to look at, we're going to go back to the collegiate ranks. We're going to look at an older prospect here, Pelle Larsson, who didn't start in Arizona. I believe he started playing for Utah, transferred across to Arizona. He's 23 years old, so we're talking upper class here. Just another one of those sort of players, Corey, that we're talking about. A wing size guy, 6'6". He 34% attempt rate, good efficiency, hit his free throws. The passing is probably what stands out. Almost 5 assists per 40 minutes for him. Great assist to turnover ratio. That 6'6" size is interesting. But like, if we're going to talk about passing from a wing player, are we talking about a guy that's this size, which is a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander size? He's not Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, very obviously, but that's the size he is. Is he that sort of a like handle the ball passing guy, or a tertiary guy like a Chris Middleton who does a lot of ball handling for Milwaukee, or is he worse than that as a ball handler? Like, what's his actual role here? Because those assist numbers do stand out given how low his usage is.
I would not put him in a tertiary box. Larsson's a tough one. He's been a tough evaluation for me because you mentioned all of the great things about him. He's skilled, he's physical, he's strong, he's efficient, he's a good shooter, he's a good passer, decision maker, but he just kind of disappears, and like, you don't know which version you're getting all the time. I look at a guy like Sam Merrill in college, who was basically Mountain West Luka, who had the ball in his hands, was an unbelievable passer, great ball handler, like played point guard for that team at, a similar probably height, maybe an inch, maybe he's missing an inch or whatever. And if you look at his role now in Cleveland, like, yeah, he's still capable of making, passes when the ball swings his way or whatever, but he is strictly playing off the ball, and he's doing a lot of like motion shooting, catch and shoot. Like, his role has really changed. And that's what I see for Larsson. Like, I think Larsson is very much a complementary player. He is probably going to be your like 4th or 5th option on the floor for most of his career, one, because of his mentality, but two, I think just his skill set is like, that's who he is. And if he just like kind of dives in on like, I could be a connected passer, but like I'm just, which, you know, he was at Arizona. It's not like, you know, he was handling the majority of the playmaking duties because they had a bunch of guys play point guard that handled a lot of the usage. So his passing was valuable in that aspect. And I think that could translate, even though I don't think the assists will translate in the same way. But he's got a lot of interesting skills that I think the shooting is going to level up, and he's going to have to take more of the threes, and some of the ancillary stuff is going to level down a little bit, just based on the fact that NBA players are unbelievable, and he's not going to be one of your top 3 scoring options because he's not a guy who's like, all right, I'm going to go get a bucket, you know, like, so, but ultimately for me, it's his mentality. He's just got to be like, I'm bringing the same kind of, it's not even an effort. It's just, I just can't float. Like he has to have a mentality of like to be aggressive and hunt a shot, even if the shot's not completely open every night. Because that's the kind of shooter he's going to have to be. So it's like, you know, he doesn't need to take 15 shots a game at the next level, but when he's in, he can't go through a 6-minute stretch and just not shoot. And there are times that it felt like that's what he did even at Arizona.
I spoke about this yesterday with Nick Kalinowski. We were talking about the filter down effect and that, you know, which works through basketball and really any other sport. And when you're sitting at a collegiate level and you're not just showing some level of dominance, if you're playing like a role player role in college, it's really hard to then, like the Sam Merrill example, like it's then hard, like how do you then become the role player in the NBA? Because the role players in the NBA were the dominant players at lower levels. They dominated through high school, they dominated their college, they ran with 30 usage and dominated defensively in college, and then had to take on a role as a spot up shooter. Like it's so hard to be able to just be that 5th option, 4th option in college who not aggressive with their shots and then do the same thing in the NBA, because the guys that are doing that are the guys who are kicking your ass in college anyway. So that to me is always I think I'm going to call it the Dalen Terry effect. Like when you come out there and you're just like, you're just doing little bits. Oh, that's great. You're a great connector and you're not doing anything aggressive. Like you're going to disappear when you get to the next level. And that's always going to be that worry for me. And that's sort of where I sit with someone like that. Now it can work. There are going to be players who are role players that can succeed as role players in college, but there are so many of these guys who we consider NBA role players. Another one, the reverse example of this, I could use Sam Merrill. Like JJ Redick's the great one. When you look at his college numbers, you go, holy shit! Like what are these numbers? Like these are insane. Like he's doing everything. Like he did absolutely everything, and then he goes to the NBA. He's like, oh yeah, well JJ Redick's just a shooter. Like okay, cool, but that's sort of what you need to do, and that's where those, I think, red flags in terms of evaluations, and he's 23 years old, those sort of things come up as things that I'm a little bit cautious. I wouldn't like to invest in that. I'd like to see you do it at the NBA level, and then maybe we see where that goes. One more guy, G League Ignite prospect, Izan Almansa, Spanish big man who, like, basically every Ignite prospect comes in with a decent level of hype and then finds out that either the system or the team or the league or whatever screws up their evaluation. At least we don't have to deal with that anymore moving forward after this season, Corey. But it's happened to basically everyone who's been there. And I think we sort of all knew that this G League team this season was going like, this is rough. Like, why is this team constructed this way? People are going to lose out in big ways because it doesn't make sense with the players they've got. Everyone's playing the same position. Everyone needs the ball. None of this stuff makes sense, so people are going to lose out. And I would say, given where Almansa is at the moment on boards, he's one of the guys that missed out. He's 6'10", he's 19. He had 15% usage. Now, it is a little bit different G League versus college. You're not expecting him to necessarily have gigantic usage, again, given the context of who's on that team. But his stock has fallen pretty significantly from where it was, even I'd say maybe before he signed with the Ignite.
Oh yeah, it definitely did. He's one of the weirdest prospects I've ever evaluated because he's also one of the most decorated prospects ever.
Yeah,
like
his Spanish national team stuff is insane.
Yeah, he's got 3 gold medals, MVPs in those scenarios. Like it's kind of unbelievable. He was a guy who before the season started on some people's boards.
Yep. I know where you're going.
He was a number one prospect.
Yep.
So. Like this is a guy who had some hype. Now I saw Ethan when he played for OTE.
Yes, okay.
in a crummy little high school gym in New Jersey against like this makeshift high school all-star team. And I was like, yeah, this guy.
Okay. It's how that reaction sounds like. It sounds like the reaction that I hear from is that, but I've heard so many people say the same thing about like Ricochet as well. It's like this guy. Why is it?
I had that reaction when I saw Ricochet as well.
Why there's six guys better on his team than him? Like, this is how this draft is like. And then some people go, man, like he's going to develop into this. It's like, what do we do? Like, it's so weird. I
had that reaction with Alex Sarr when I saw him in the same gym. In the same gym in New Jersey.
They played together.
Air balls,
that's
like.
Right.
It's but Alex Sarr, he went to a situation where he was able to showcase what he can do, and increase, I think, his stock, because he was very much not a consensus number one guy coming in. Even after FIBA, he was not like, oh, this is the guy we have to have at number one. Like, potentially lottery, but like not everywhere. So I think that Almansa going to the Ignite program and playing next to, like Ron Holland, who soaked up all of this usage. It was just like, and they, Pooh Jeter, who was like their vet point guard, like left because he got hired by the Portland Trailblazers. And you're stuck with these vets who are like shoot first until Norris Cole came like midway through the season. London Johnson, I think, is a good passer, playmaker. He was in and out of the lineup. Not really necessarily an impact guy. Almansa, the big thing is like he needs to be set up. He needs to play with guys who like know what they're doing on the court. He does have good feel. He does have IQ. He does have intriguing skills, although he's a total non-shooter. But he needs other guys who have that same feel. If you look at the Spanish national teams, every year, historically, these are guys who you're like, oh, great passers. They move off the ball. They're skilled, right? Like, this was very much not what the Ignite program was. It was a bunch of individuals who got together on a Saturday morning and played pickup together, and against grown men, and got their ass kicked every night.
Say the exact same thing. They just went out there and got pounded every time they played.
Yeah, it was like, the JV team going and traveling, not even playing their varsity team. It was like the JV team going and traveling to play like all of the state champions. Like they were losing by 50 to some of these teams, So just a weird context to evaluate him. I got to break down film with him and speak to him and pick his mind and go through some of the stuff. Like, there's clearly a player in there that can be an NBA player because, he can do some things defensively. He's not going to be like a big time shot blocker, but he could switch a little bit. He's a really good passer. He's good pick and roll guy. He's got skills. And in the right situation, you're looking at like, what if you got like very old, more washed Al Horford who couldn't shoot? And like, I don't know how valuable that guy is, but he's probably at least a bench player in the NBA. He's just didn't get to show it with the Ignite team. And, I've heard some rumblings that he even ends up in the NBL next year. Okay. And might not even like stay in the draft. So we'll see what happens on that end. But if he does go in the draft, I don't think he's a terrible swing because he did win those MVPs for a reason.
Yeah.
Like
he had a lot of hype.
Yeah, it wasn't like he won one MVP. Like, this is a dude who historically in those settings has been really, 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 really great. And when he matches up with Alex Sarr, like, he's outplayed him. So like, this is a guy with talent. It was a really hard developmental context. And the tricky part about it is like, we talked about AJ Johnson and how it was tricky, but you could see like, oh, well, at least AJ Johnson, like he can shoot, he can pass, like he could do these things that are valued by NBA teams. Non-floor spacing big men that don't protect the rim particularly well, it's not exactly a hot commodity, So it's like, it was a rough situation for him, but coming out of the OTE, it's like, it's not like he had a ton of options. Because he very much so could have ended up like a Trenton Flowers or an AJ Johnson who, went to a team in the NBL and didn't have the Alex Sarr treatment, So it was tough for Almansa, but there could be something in there if a team wants to swing.
I haven't broken this character out for a while. I'm gonna bring super casual draft analysis Josh out for this one, because you hear what you say about the sort of certain parts of his game, and then we go super superficial, and you're basically gonna go, he's got the same height, he sort of looks like Marvin Bagley. And then you say, well, I'm not sure he's a rim protector. Like, I'm not sure he can't shoot. Like, yeah, he rebounds all right. Like, he's got some skill. He's well decorated. And I go, that's just sounds like Marvin Bagley. All those things add up, and Marvin Bagley's fine as a backup in his current role at times. But like, that's all those things. And then I look at him and go, yeah, I can sort of see that you look like it as well. That's where I go, well, I'm not sure about that. But obviously that is just the most basic. It's the same as the take of, well, this guy went to the same school, went to the same country, or he's got the same surname or first name that leads to those comparisons. But sometimes you don't even have to squint and go, oh, maybe. Like, maybe that's the sort of player we're looking at.
Yeah, I think Bagley is a different scenario just because Bagley doesn't have to feel stuff, and he's a way better athlete. He's a way better athlete too.
Yep.
But yeah, but I could see him being in the same kind of situation, because like Bagley, it's like, he doesn't exactly fit the version of the NBA that NBA teams want, but like, he is talented enough to play minutes on an NBA team, even if it's not starting minutes or, go ahead of Luka Doncic minutes, right? Like, he's still an NBA caliber player, and that might just be what Almansa is. He might just be an NBA caliber player that isn't what he was billed as in this season evaluation. And I think that, honestly, that's the most important thing to remember. Like, whether it's with these Ignite prospects or, a collegiate prospect, you know what? Just because a prospect was billed as a 5-star McDonald's All-American doesn't make him a sure thing to play in the NBA and be a star, or even make it in the NBA. You might not make it. You might not be an NBA player. You might get a leash because you were considered that at one point. So I think in this draft in particular, to circle back to the beginning of the conversation that we had, like, this is why, like, this is the year for your board to take the swings and follow your instincts and your beliefs. Because if we're going to sit and say that this draft is weak and not talented, then we can believe our eyes from the tape that we watched this year when certain guys weren't that good, and be like, all right, you know what? I know that everywhere has them as a top 10 player, but maybe he just isn't. Like, maybe he's just not that guy, and it just so happens to be the strength of the class that's pushing him there. But I don't think he's one of the top 10 players, so I'm not going to have him there. And I think that's fine in this class to have that perspective, as long as you did your homework.
I agree. Just do the work, have your reasoning, whether you're an amateur evaluator, professional scout, NBA GM, whatever it is. Like, have a reasoning, have a discussion about it, have stuff that makes sense, and then it's hard to argue with that sort of rationale. But that does bring us to the end of arguing with that rationale about these 6 different prospects, Corey. So tell us, this will come out a couple of days after we record it. So what's in the pipeline over at No Ceilings at the moment?
I mean, we're pumping out written articles every day, Monday through Friday. Get in your inbox, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every morning. If you subscribe, it's free. We do have a plus option that, you'll get bonus features, access to our Discord, different, private pieces that we release that you get access to, our mock drafts, our behind the scenes stuff. So you get bonus content. For me in particular, I've been breaking down film with a lot of the prospects. I just sat down with Bub Carrington from Pitt, who I think is, a guy who
he's rising up at the moment. I'm hearing a lot of Bub Carrington. He's rising up quickly.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up in the lottery on draft night. Youngest U.S.-born prospect in the draft. Okay. Broke onto the scene with a triple-double early, but I just got to pick his brain, watch film with him. Just released one with Dylan Jones from Weber State. Got a bunch more that I'm recording. So that's kind of been my focus, and will continue to be my focus through the rest of the draft. But we have the No Ceilings podcast, which we put out 4 days a week right now. We got the draft guide coming out. It's a whole bunch of stuff. It's at noceilingsnba.com. at No Ceilings NBA on socials, No Ceilings on YouTube. So that's where you can find all of it.
Go and check it out. Everyone will be well aware of No Ceilings through either their appearances here or on every other part of media. And when you're looking for a good microphone pop filter, Corey is going to be able to hook you up with that. Corey, thanks again for coming on the show and for all the work that you do across over at No Ceilings.
I appreciate you having me on, as always.
And that's it. Don't forget, go and hit the old thumb, go and hit the old subscribe on the YouTube. Do the double bang as well, audio and video, and leave your comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.